Whoa, 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 guys, just stop the freaking presses right now, okay? I'm about to drop a bombshell on you. Did you guys know that God Usopp, our Lord and Savior, the God Usopp, and the Messiah, Buggy D. Clown, have never actually met before in the series? Is there a rip in the space-time continuum or something for such a thing to occur? Well, actually, is that what that thing is in the corner of my room? I thought it was an ice cream machine when I woke up this morning, but ripping the space-time continuum, that makes more sense. I'll deal with that later. But my point is that, yeah, I just realized this in a live stream the other night. You're sitting there and you're thinking, like, Usopp and Buggy are two of the most prominent, like, comic relief kind of characters. Not really comic relief in the sense that that's all they do. Buggy a little bit, but obviously Usopp is a member of the main cast, and he's got some pretty serious fights before. Buggy is definitely more comic relief than Usopp, although Usopp has his moments. But it's just, like, a natural thing that you'd figure that Usopp and Buggy, if they ever met, how they would play off each other. And I started going back through the One Piece series and, like, holy crap, they've never actually met, okay? Because Buggy first appeared at Orange Town. That was before Usopp's introduction. Then later on, Buggy appeared at Log Town, but, you know, Usopp didn't meet him there either because Buggy was in the middle of the plaza doing the whole thing with the scaffolding and Luffy and Dragon's lightning bolt of, you know, fatherly protection and all that stuff. Usopp and Nami weren't in the plaza. Sanji and Zoro were, but Usopp and Nami, they were at the docks getting the ship ready to go, and I think they ran into Kabaji and Moji and Richie and everybody, but Usopp never directly ran into Buggy. And then the crew, like the collective crew, never runs into Buggy again after that. After the crew is separated, Luffy runs into him, and Buggy sort of becomes like the de facto first mate of Luffy's crew while they're going through Impel Down. If you want to look at it like that, it is pretty funny. It's like, okay, Luffy is separated from the Straw Hats, and this big giant war is looming in the background. Luffy's got to gather a new kind of secondary crew in order to get him through this, and the first person he recruits, Buggy the Clown. You know, Luffy has an eye. He has an eye for talent right there. And then he has Mr. 2, of course, and then Mr. 3 is in there, Galdino, then you get Ivankov and Inazuma eventually, and then Crocodile and Jinbei. So Luffy did a pretty good job. Not exactly on the level of our current crew, but still pretty good B team, if I had to say so myself. So yeah, Buggy has never really had like a serious fight to the point where it's like, okay, enough joking around here. I'm gonna use my talents as the clown star and my powerful Bara no Mi, which would actually, let's just admit that right now. Buggy's fruit, if he trained with it and if he learned, you know, pretty decent observation and armament and maybe picked up a few weapons, maybe learned some decent sword skills and things, because as it stands, Buggy really only has like a pair of knives, which I guess he could use pretty adeptly, but not that much, you know, like if he used a sword when he was about to slice Luffy apart, you know, so I mean, like stuff like that. But if he just trained a little bit, then it would be a formidable opponent. Would he be like Yonko level? Well, obviously, yeah, but you know, he just doesn't do that because he's like, you know, it would be too easy, you know, if I could just become a Yonko and take over the entire world, right? So that's why he stays humble the way he is right now. But no, like during Marineford, you had some moments where like Mihawk, you know, Luffy's like, Gumu Gumu no scapegoat, and then just pulls Buggy right in front of Mihawk and just gets sliced into freaking baloney, and then just like reassembles himself, and he's like, oh, come on now, this is just getting ridiculous. Even when Buggy tries to act cool, because I think Buggy himself is kind of aware of his, like, ridiculousness. I mean, the fact that his epithet is literally the clown. And I have a theory here that nose that Buggy has, and the reason he's so, like, you know, he doesn't like it when anyone makes fun of his nose, he's very sensitive about that subject. I don't think that's a fake nose. I think it's his actual nose. Like, he was born with said nose. We've never seen a picture of baby Buggy. So whenever Oda eventually reveals that flashback and we see baby Buggy, we're going to see that little nose there. And he's going to be sensitive about that his whole life. So at some point he decided, you know what? I have the nose. I'm already kind of a ridiculous looking kind of guy. I'm just going to become the clown star. I'm just going to become the clown pirate. That's just what I'm going to do, right? So he knows in a sense that he's kind of goofy. But every now and then, Buggy does, I think, try to act super cool. He's like, okay, guys, I know I act kind of like a doofus, but I am still a pirate. I still trained on Goldie Roger's ship. I was trained in the arts of combat by Silver's Rayleigh himself. The messed up thing is, all of that was probably true. It didn't stick. Cause you'd figure, like, how does someone like Buggy end up on, a crew with Roger and Rayleigh and yet ends up the way he does? You think, like, Buggy in his past would have went up to Rayleigh at some point and, like, Rayleigh-san, can you train me in the art of swordsmanship a little bit? Maybe it was just like a thing, like, you go to school and you try to learn something, and just no matter how many times you try to learn it, it just doesn't click. I was like that in Spanish. Whole year of Spanish in high school, and I only know how to say 2 words. Gracias and zapatos. So I could say thank you for the shoes, but beyond that, I'm pretty much just dead when it comes to Spanish, okay? So Buggy, maybe he was like that too. He couldn't pick up anything from Rayleigh or Roger, and he went his own direction. Although, when it comes to explosives, he's actually not that bad at that, because he managed to take the Buggy Ball, which is already a highly explosive cannonball, and compress it down to the size of, like, a gumball. Which, that's fairly impressive if he was the one that invented it, and was the one that figured out a way to compress it down to that size. Alright, that's not a bad freaking, skill to have. But even when he tried to be cool and like, hold on guys, I got this. And then he launches it against Minotauros, and he's like, haha. And it doesn't knock him down. It doesn't KO Minotauros. And he's like, oh, come on. So Buggy can never really have a serious fight where he wins based on his own skill. Usopp, on the other hand, of course, has had that plenty of times. This is still one of my favorite Usopp fights. Usopp's had some pretty manly fights throughout the series. Luffy versus Usopp is probably the most notable one, but one of the ones that always sticks out for me is his fight against Chu. Alright, because this was like the first battle that Usopp really had to do one-on-one. Like, when they were fighting against Kuro and Django, it was on home turf. Like, that was Usopp's village, and he was protecting all of the villagers and his Usopp pirates and Kaya, and I think Zoro was there to help him out against Django. But when it came to Arlong Park, and, and also the Baratie, Usopp didn't have any direct fights on the Baratie, but then it got to Arlong Park. There's one thing to just act all cool, like everybody, like in that scene with Nami, when Luffy puts the hat on Nami, and then walks away, and then Zoro and Sanji and Usopp are all standing there like, let's do it, let's bust some heads, and they start walking to Arlong Park. It's one thing to act really cool in that moment, and I'm sure Usopp was like freaking out on the inside, like they're all walking to Arlong Park about ready to, wreck the place. And Usopp's probably there like, yeah, we're gonna do this. But inside he's like, oh, I'm a little nervous about this, guys. Little nervous. But he went with his crew because of Nami, and everybody's like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I have to do this, right? And so the fights all break apart, and he's being chased by Chu, and he's running away. And at first, he tries to do like, oh, I'm gonna try to subterfuge. I'm gonna try to trick them, and make it look like I'm actually defeated. I'm on the ground bleeding, when in reality, I'm okay. It was just a ketchup packet and everything. And he's like, I'm gonna do my own tricks. But then that's when Usopp really realizes, like, no, there's no way I can trick my way out of this. Chu is really strong. He's a fishman. He's 10 times stronger than an average human. But guess what? I have to defeat him. There's no way around it. I can't fake my way through this. What would Luffy say? What would Nami think? And all this stuff. This is for her sake. I have to defeat this guy. It has to happen no matter what. And so he decides to stand up, and he's like, I'm gonna get hurt. I'm gonna get beaten down. I might not make it out of this in one piece, but I gotta do something. So I love that fight. Of course, though, the Luffy versus Usopp fight is probably the most, standard one. That's the one where Usopp just cuts all of the bullshit, and just like he uses his techniques like the Usopp spell and all that stuff, but he like, that's like just how he fights, at a base level. He takes it 100% seriously, right? I even like it how during Dressrosa, remember the scene in Dressrosa when he ascends to godhood, where everyone's about to be defeated, and it's like, oh no, his hope is over. It's all done. Robin's turned into a toy, and Sugar and Trouble managed to defeat the Tontatas, and it's like the plan failed and everyone's gonna die. And then you had the scene where Sugar just shoves it into Usopp's... Sugar shoves the Tonta Tabasco pellet into Usopp's mouth, and then he freaks out, and then that saves the day. But it was a funny scene, and of course the aftermath is, he is our Lord and Savior. But in case you thought that that was kind of like cheap, if you thought that it was like, oh, so Usopp never really had a true shining moment on his own merit, it was just a gag, basically. It was his hilarity, his comic relief that managed to save the day. Even if you were of that mindset, Oda still gave him a scene later in the arc to really prove, no, it's not just like, oh, Usopp is useless and he's just a goof and his goofiness was the thing that saved the day. No, he really does have skill. So I like how they came back later and he's like unlocked observation hockey and he took out Sugar properly while also injecting some humor and goofiness into it as well. Usopp is fully conscious now. He unlocks observation. He has to make a sniper shot from basically straight across the city, miles away from their current location. And on top of that, he has to hit a small window. And on top of that, he has to hit it through one of the panes of the glass of the window. And then he has to hit it directly in between Law and Luffy where Sugar is standing. So he has to calculate all of this stuff in his head. He has to calculate how far back he's going to pull his, Kabuto. He's got to calculate the wind. He's got to calculate, the rise and the descent of the shot. He's got to calculate, how big the window pane is he's firing through. He's probably got to calculate, when it hits the window, the glass might mess with the trajectory a little bit. And he's got to calculate Sugar's height compared to Luffy and Law's height exactly and just nail her perfectly. That still sounded wrong. She's 22. Sugar is technically 22, okay? But anyway, he's got to do all of that stuff. And he pulls it off with observation hockey. But even without observation hockey, he still probably would have done I don't know if he would have hit it as perfectly as he did, but even without observation hockey, he's always been a really good sniper, right? So that proves right there. And then with the little ingenuity with asking Kanjuro to create, the special shot that creates the fake Usopp head that comes out and la 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 la, and then Sugar, oh my god, so that was Usopp's shining moment. So my point of the matter here is, this is what the whole video is coming to, basically. What would happen if Buggy and Usopp ever met? I'm not going to say what would happen if they fought each other, because I don't really see that going down, because the way things are right now, Buggy is not a serious threat in the world. If anything, if the warlord system gets abolished, he's gonna be he's like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen now, this is gonna be bad, guys, So I don't see them, fighting, but I do see them maybe teaming up with the Straw Hats, kind of in a similar way that Luffy teamed up with Buggy at Impel Down at Marineford, okay? So now, I'm picturing this fight where you have Usopp and Buggy teaming up against one of, a Yonko commander, or one of the Blackbeard crew, or something like that. Usopp's gotta fight, Van Augur. I mean, that's gotta happen, right? But no one said he had to fight him alone. Because that's something else about these two characters that you gotta keep in mind. This is a popular trope that is used quite a bit. Probably the most obvious one outside of One Piece that just comes to my head is in One Punch Man, King. King is a really weak character, but he just has, tremendous amounts of luck. In fact, you could probably argue that King does have a superpower, and it's just a massive amount of cosmic fortune and luck, where whatever he says and however he acts, even if it's in a completely separate way, people view it as, really intimidating and scary. King could, walking down the street and then a giant monster come out and, I'm gonna attack you, King! And then King could just, reach down to pick up a quarter off of the sidewalk, and the monster would be like, wait a second! He's reaching down to pick up a quarter. He's gonna use the quarter and use his divine strength to fling it right through me. He doesn't even need to fight me with his bare hands. I'm out of here! And then the monster runs down the stair. That's how it happens. And then King picks up the quarter I can use this to buy one of those little miniature sugar figurines from the toy dispensary or whatever. Yes. Wait, what happened? That's King. That's kind of the same thing with Buggy and Usopp. Where, you could also say it as oh no, Tekking, that's called plot armor. That's called the author just, wants to make it so that character can never really die, even though if we're taking this from a realistic perspective, Usopp and Buggy, there's a few fights they were in, if If it wasn't for their massive amounts of good fortune, they probably wouldn't have made it. But it's manga, and this is kind of a trope in and of itself, right? But my point is, if you get those two characters together, what would happen? You know, like, you get Buggy and Usopp together, and they're running around and they're making fun of each other's noses or something. You're just like, what the hell are you doing, Long Nose? Like, Long Nose, who the hell are you to talk, freaking Red Nose? Don't you call my nose red! It is red, you idiot! And they're running down, and they stumble into the One Piece. They stumble into the One Piece, or they fight against one of the Blackbeard crew, or a Yonko commander, or somebody, and they team up, and they somehow manage to win the day. You know, like, Usopp takes a bunch of, like, Buggy's little mini muggy balls, and he combines them all together with his Kabuto, and he fires off a bunch, and they explode simultaneously or something, and just a tremendous amount of good luck occurs, and, like, a giant mountain just happens to fall out of the sky the exact same time that happens, and crushes the enemy, and they win. Now, listen, I wouldn't want this to be like a serious fight, so I'm backing up a little bit from the Van Augur thing or a Yonko commander, but let's say that everybody gathers together at Raftel or Last Island or whatever, and there is this big epic battle. There's this big epic throne war that Doflamingo spoke about. The warlords are there, the Yonko there, their commanders are there, the Straw Hats are there, the Marines are there, and like the entire arc is maybe just Oda having his wet dreams fulfilled, and the entire arc is just Oda fulfilling every wet dream he's ever had, having characters interact with other characters that they just never had a chance to before. Leave your comments below on, which characters that have never met that you think would be cool playing off each other, that kind of thing. And I'm sure Oda's thought of that as well. I think Oda probably at some point has thought, like, Buggy and Usopp together. Like, that's never occurred, but that would be hilarious if it did, It probably did occur maybe in one of the movies or the OVAs, like those like feudal Japan OVAs maybe, but never like in the canon of the manga is what I'm saying, right? So that would be really hilarious, right? Maybe there's this big epic battle going on, there's all these fights happening at once, and, Usopp and Buggy just happen to team up and happen to fight against, an opponent that's not like Yonko commander level, but still maybe ranks like really high. Like, someone that's like not Katakuri level, but like Cracker level. Maybe something along those lines there, It could even be a thing, like, this would actually be really cool. Imagine if, let's say, the warlord system is abolished and they turn, right, just back into normal pirates, right? And then all of the warlords, they realize, like, their one chance of redeeming their status or their one chance of making it in this new world now that the system has been abolished is go to Raftel. Go to Raftel and see what it's going on there with this big epic fight. What if each of the Straw Hats team up with a member of the warlords, either past or present, and they fight against a member of Blackbeard's crew? Because I'm imagining Blackbeard at that point, he has the 10 Titanic captains, but he's also gonna have a bunch of other, members at that point, plus the Marines. So the Marines, you could throw them in there as enemies to fight against as well. So you could have Buggy team up with Usopp. You could have, I don't know, Boa team up with Nami and Robin. That would be hilarious. Just because, or more hilarious, you could have Sanji team up with Boa. And that's just for hilarity right there. Mihawk obviously was Zoro. You could have Crocodile team up with, like, Luffy, or that would be really actually kind of like, oh, that's tense right there. But it's like, they need to team up in order to face against a stronger power, something along those lines there. Let's see, Weevil, I don't know. Weevil, the jury is still out on even what's going on with Weevil. I don't really want to make any guesses there. You have Law, of course, who is no longer a warlord, but of course would be part of the Throne War section there. Kuma would be really cool to fight. Actually, Kuma and Robin would be a cool team up there, because Robin had ties to the Revolutionary Army, so that would be neat. Let's see, who could Chopper team up with? Chopper can team up with Doflamingo. I think that balances out rather nice. So yeah, this plan isn't exactly set in stone, but it would be neat, because it's like, obviously the warlords have been built up all throughout the story, and if the system got abolished, if they had like one last hurrah at Raftel, like all of the warlords are there, you might as well have the warlords team up with the Straw Hats fighting against the Marine Admirals or the Vice Admirals or Blackbeard's crew or something like that. I think I could see that. Maybe not every single member teams up perfectly, but, something like that, I could see that working. So, yeah, I really don't know what the purpose of this video was. It was basically just taking, a springboard from a comment that was like, hey, Buggy and Usopp have never met? I'm like, wow, they haven't. All right, we could center an entire video around that. That makes sense, right? So, you guys have a good day. Anyway, that was this video. Honestly, I just wanted something a little bit more, chill after the stream we did yesterday. Me, Roger, Nux did the big epic Devil Fruit contest winning stream, and we announced the 51 winners of the contest, and that was really fun, and that took about 4 hours, and it was laggy. So after that whole ordeal, I kind of just wanted to, let's just take it a little chill today. So, yeah. Did you guys notice I have a massive cowlick on the back of my head? Probably nobody noticed. Later, everyone!